So for today's video, I thought I'd sit down and do a ranking of the MCU heroes. Now, I'm going to be doing a ranking where there's going to be people showing up in some movies that don't actually have their own solo movie, so a person like that would be Hawkeye. So I'm going to kind of include him in like the Avengers and just, I'll mention him anyway. So I believe there won't be all of the MCU heroes because I'm not even too sure if I have all of them. I'm pretty sure I have like most of them, but there's going to be people showing up in TV shows, which I'm not really going to include in the video, so it's just going to be going on to the movies. So with all of that being said, let's get into the video. I should also say this is going to be all in my opinion, and this is just going to be kind of just my opinion of the whole heroes in general, so it's going to be going from least favorite to favorite. So for the first person we have Captain Marvel. Now, I'm not a massive fan of Captain Marvel, I never really was. I didn't even know who that was maybe like a few years ago, and overall for her movie, I just didn't really enjoy it way too much. I thought it was like an iffy movie at best. It just wasn't, like, it didn't really click for me. And then, there's like, the person coming on like after this is going to be Black Panther, and I didn't even like enjoy Black Panther too much either. I thought it was like a pretty kind of bad movie. Not per se like bad, but just wasn't a great movie. There was times in the movie which I didn't really kind of feel the whole CGI was great or anything, so overall for the character, he's just not really a great character in general, like my opinion anyway. I think overall he's just really like iffy, and to be honest, I'm excited to see what they're going to do in the future for him, but overall right now, just not really a favorite. He's pretty much one of my least favorites. Coming in next, we have Hawkeye. Now, for Hawkeye in general, I'm not really too sure what they're going to be doing for him in the future, if he's going to be retired, if he's going to have like a Netflix, or not a Netflix, but a Disney Plus TV show. I'm pretty sure he is going to have one of them, and I'm not really too sure if he's going to show up in the movies anymore. But overall for him, he's just a very kind of iffy character. He's never had his own movie or even TV show yet, so we haven't really got like great kind of exploration into the whole character. So overall, he's just not really a great character, and pretty much one of my least favorites we've seen in the MCU, so far. So coming in next, we have Gamora. Now, Gamora in general, I never really was a massive fan of her. I kind of think overall she's really iffy. I don't really know way too much to say about her other than for Endgame, she's going to be alive. She's going to be showing up in Guardians 3 or whenever that movie actually does come out, which I'm sure will come out within maybe a few years. I'm pretty sure we'll know the actual MCU slate within maybe sometime in August, so that's going to be good whenever we have like somewhat of a release date or even year for when that movie will be coming out. So I don't really have too much to say for her other than I'm not a massive fan of the character, and I never really was. Coming up next, we have Drax. Now, overall for Drax, I think he's an iffy character as well. He's not really a great character. I do believe he is a bit better than Gamora, but not even by that much, because, he's a really, I want to say, funny character, but to the point where it's a bit too funny, where it comes off way too much. So that's one of the many things I'm not a massive fan about like Drax, and he's just never really been a favorite character. He's never kind of like stood out to me. He's just kind of just been there, if you know what I mean. So coming up next, we have Nebula. Now, Nebula I do believe is better than Gamora and Drax, but there is like a few other like Guardians which I do believe are a bit better, and those are going to be Groot, Rocket, and Star-Lord, which I'll go over whenever I go on to them. So going over like Nebula, she's pretty interesting. She's never really been like, she stood out a bit more than Gamora, in my opinion anyway. So overall, her backstory is pretty kind of tragic, is like the way I want to describe it. And I think she's just pretty good in all of the times she's like showed up in the MCU. I think she's like a really interesting character in that sense, going on to her kind of hatred, or not even hatred anymore, for like Gamora. Coming up next, we have Groot. Now, Groot overall is like a very interesting character. Like overall, throughout the whole movies and every time he's appeared, I think he's been just pretty funny. That's pretty much just about it for the whole character. There's never been anything that's really stood out besides like that one scene in Guardians 1 where he sacrifices himself. I think that's like the only time I've felt that he's ever done something besides being funny, which overall I prefer like a character who's way more serious and kind of can be funny, so a bit more like Iron Man. Coming up next, we have Rocket. Now, overall for Rocket, I think he's one of the best Guardians besides, Star-Lord whenever I go on to him. So going over Rocket, I think he's a pretty kind of like tragic backstory, which we haven't really went on and discovered. And he's pretty funny, and honestly, I think that's one of the best kind of things about the whole character in general, how funny he is. Now, there is some characters which I think are funny, but they're way too funny in a sense, or they're kind of annoying when they're funny. So that would kind of be like Drax, because of like that joke in Infinity War where he's apparently like invisible, which I think is just kind of, it's just not really funny overall after watching it again. Breaking us into the top 10 is going to be Ant-Man. Now, overall for Ant-Man, I think he's a really funny character, and overall I'm a massive fan of Ant-Man. He's one of those characters that is going to be funny that I actually love all the time because, as I said for Drax, it comes across a bit annoying and just unfunny, like sometimes it just isn't funny at all. But going on to Ant-Man, and just every time he's appeared, he's always kind of made a joke which is somewhat funny, which honestly, I do love that about a character, and sometimes he is like a bit serious, but it doesn't really come out like very often. Sometimes it just doesn't really work out to be like way too serious, which I do enjoy sometimes. So coming up next, we have Doctor Strange. Now, I do believe he is one of the best characters in this show, and I do believe he's not really like way too funny, but he is way more serious, which I do enjoy quite a lot about the character. And I do think for that kind of character, you need to be a bit more serious than like Ant-Man or like, you know, Drax or anything. I think you just need to be a lot more serious, which I do think works out like really well for the character. Coming up next, we have Star-Lord. Now, overall, he's a pretty funny character. He's pretty much my favorite Guardian, which I do think, you know, it's going to be a lot of people's favorite Guardian as well. Now, he is very funny, and he's, like, rarely serious, which I do find to be pretty funny, and I do, like, enjoy, like, a lot for Star-Lord. I do think he's one of the best, you know, characters in the MCU anyway. So, I don't really have anything else to go over for the character, so I'm going to go on to the next one, which is going to be Black Widow. Now, Black Widow is very interesting because she's been funny before and I did like it quite a lot, but overall I do think she's a way more serious character, which I do think works a lot better for that character, considering she is pretty much an assassin, which, you know, it's just going to be kind of insane when you have a funny assassin, which it doesn't really work out good when you say it like that. So coming in at number 6, we have the Hulk. Now, for the Hulk, I do enjoy the Hulk quite a lot in general in the movies. Now, his own solo movie, I do think is kind of iffy overall, but for all the other times he's appeared, so Thor Ragnarok, the Avengers, all those movies, I do think he's like really funny sometimes, which I do enjoy for the Hulk. I do think for the Hulk, being kind of funny works a lot better than being serious. And that is pretty much why he is one of my favorite characters. Like, there's a scene in the Avengers where he's like throwing around Loki, which honestly I'm pretty sure everyone in like my cinema ended up laughing at that. So, you know, for that to happen is pretty much like just amazing, to be honest, for the Hulk to have that ability to make people laugh. So bringing us into the top 5, we have Captain America. Now, Captain America for me has always been a really iffy character because overall, I've liked him, but I don't love him. I think he's like pretty much, you know, he is like the leader of the Avengers, which I honestly kind of, like overall in my childhood, I considered Tony Stark to kind of be the leader. So for Steve Rogers in general, I do think he is like pretty much everyone's favorite character. He's never, like he is funny sometimes, but he's way more serious, which I do think needs to work out if you're going to be like a team leader. Like it just works out way better if you're a team leader and you're just, you know, I want to say more straight face instead of like laughing all the time or making jokes, which, you know, in Endgame he made quite a few jokes which a lot of people did laugh at, which I did think was pretty funny. So, you know, sometimes for his character to be funny, it works out pretty well. Now going on to the next spot, we have Spider-Man. Now Spider-Man in the MCU is going to be very controversial because, you know, there's going to be a lot of fans from like the Raimi trilogies, and like it's just insane how like split Spider-Man fans are in general because of how people enjoy the MCU version, how they don't. Now going on to Spider-Man in general in the MCU, I do like him quite a lot. You know, he's way more funny than serious, which I do think works out a lot better if you're going to be like Spider-Man, to be honest, because Spider-Man needs to be funny, he needs to be cheeky. Like, that's just kind of him in the comics, which, you know, if he's going to be really serious, it's not really going to work out like you can be serious for Spider-Man, but it's not really going to work out as amazing as it is if you try and be a lot more funny. Now bringing us into the top 3, we have Wanda, or Scarlet Witch. Now I believe she was never actually called Scarlet Witch in the MCU, so I'm just going to kind of call her Wanda. Overall, you know, I do think she's probably, like, you know, honestly one of the best characters in the MCU. Even after that Endgame scene where she pretty much destroys like Thanos, it is pretty much like, it's just insane how powerful she actually is. And overall, she's probably one of the most powerful in the MCU, and I believe in the comics as well. Now she is one of my favorites. You know, there's many reasons, which I'm only going to say like 1 or 2 of them. So one of the main reasons I think she's like just amazing is because of how, you know, the actress portrays her. I think she, like, honestly, the hand movements I'm pretty sure she does is like one of the best I've ever seen anyone do in general for hand movements. And then the other reason why I actually like Scarlet Witch or Wanda so much is just because of how powerful she actually is, because as I said in the comics, I'm pretty sure she even made her own like universe or her own planet or something. She went on and done something like insane like that anyway. Going on to the number 2 spot, we have Thor. Now, for Thor overall, a load of people did not like him up until Ragnarok, which honestly I do think is a shame, and it is honestly, I get why. I honestly do get why, because you have Thor the Dark World, you have like the first like Thor movie, which is in my top 10 movies of the MCU. I might do a video for that, I'm not really too sure yet, but maybe. Anyway, going on to Thor, there was Ragnarok, which pretty much redeemed Thor for a lot of people, made him like pretty much one of their most favorite characters. Now, honestly, for Thor, I can't even put into words how much I actually do like Thor. Like, I've liked Thor since his first movie and since like the first Avengers movie, which a load of people can't really say, or a load of people don't say that because they never did like Thor back then. And Thor as well is probably one of the like funniest characters in the MCU. I'm not even going to try and like complain about that, because overall for Thor being funny, I think it works out like a lot better than him being like really serious. Now, coming in at the number 1 spot, we have Iron Man. Now, Iron Man to me is one of my favorite characters in the whole, like, just favorite characters, top 10 favorite characters for me anyway. So I will list off like maybe the top 5 or top 6 or whatever. So number 1, it's going to be Dr. Fate. Swamp Thing is number 2. I'm pretty sure number 3 is like the Flash. Number 4 is going to be Iron Man, and then you've like Thor. I'm not really going to mention any more, but going on to Iron Man in general, he's always been one of my favorite characters. He's serious, he's funny, all at the same time. He's like seriously funny, if you know what I'm trying to do there. But anyway, for just Iron Man in general, he's just overall, I'm physically kind of like, it is impossible for me to put into words how much I actually do like Tony Stark. Now, for him kind of like being gone and, doing the whole thing in Avengers Endgame, the whole snap, it was expected. Honestly, it was expected, but it still does kind of hurt knowing we're not going to see him in the future of the MCU. We're going to feel his presence, but we're not going to see him anymore, or he's not really going to be alive anymore, if you know obviously what I mean there. But there could be different dimensions which could work out, maybe, hopefully, eventually. You don't actually know what's going to be going on. So that has been my MCU Heroes ranking video. So the next video will be a video going over my top 10 most anticipated movies for the next, few months. So that'll probably be tomorrow. I'm not really too sure yet. The video after that will probably be like this video, except I'll be doing the villains, which it's going to be more difficult to kind of do because it's just going to be a bit like, I have so many villains in the MCU which I do actually love, and some which I, honestly I do hate. I'm not really going to name them out here, so it will be in the next video, whenever that is. So if you did enjoy the video, you can leave a like, you can subscribe, you can comment down below if you want to, and obviously comment down below your like ranking or whatever as well for this, and just hope you have a wonderful day as well, and goodbye.